We are just after day 2 of the Ambition to Scale conference run by Intertrade Ireland, Invest Northern Ireland and the British Business Bank. The focus was all around ambition to scale and access to finance while doing so. We had a range of fantastic speakers and I have lots of insights to share with you from day 2. So first of all, we had Sherry Coutu, phenomenal woman, has had 70 plus investments, a woman of a great portfolio career, has raised between 4 and 5 billion in money that she has been working in with a variety of different companies in a variety of different mechanisms at different stages, and really insightful woman. So here's what she had to say. First of all, she said, why solve a small problem when you can solve a big one? And you know, when she puts out that question to you, it makes you think. It really does make you think. Is that we all have 24 hours in our day, and that we all have the time and the effort. Resources, I know, they can be of different levels, but at the same stage, her question is that if you've got what you've got, why not make the biggest impact with it? Now, she mentioned a great growth hack. She talks about businesses having the opportunity to bring in interns or bring in MBA students or bring in co-op students or bringing in people who are just come into your business for a period of time, give them really good experience by giving them specific problems where, as she says, where you can just bust this open, was the way she described it to us, of where just giving people one and done type jobs in exchange for the experience, and indeed many of these can be paid positions as well. On that note, actually, Intertrade Ireland has a great opportunity called Fusion that can really fund that as well and offer opportunities all around. She spoke about RACI. RACI is mapping out where people sit within your company who are responsible, that's R, A is accountable, C is consulted, and I is informed. And also how you can use that type of model to understand how you would work with external stakeholders as well. She says it can be a really clarifying experience for the company, and in addition, it can also help when those roles change. She spoke about the efficiency of capital raising, and that is really important, that as you're raising money, that you also keep an eye on the operational ball, because after all, that's what's going to matter afterwards. That's particularly, again, how she said to make sure and be aware of what RACI is in place and how that might change. Now, then she also finished in this quote, and she said, some days will be good, some days will be tougher, but the ecosystem always wants you to win. And I think that was a really inspirational, but it's an actionable question to put to us all as well. So then we had Stuart Harvey from Datactics. Now, Stuart was our case study across both days, and he spoke about his experience, and in addition, he also took a live Q&A. Interesting, the questions that came in, it was questions like, Stuart, have you ever turned down money and why? If you were going out to raise money tomorrow, where would you go? And where would you go if you wanted mentorship or support or advice as distinct to just money? And Stuart answered all those questions. And I mean, he's a great guy who clearly has so much experience from a variety of angles as an entrepreneur in terms of fundraising, and he's also an investor himself. But he's also somebody who's very technologically adept and knows an awful lot about running a company in multiple countries. So a couple of things that Stuart shared with us was, he said, first of all, a founder who gives up equity to hire co-founders and new hires, he said, and investors, builds a more valuable company faster than one who parts with less equity. That's been his experience. But we had a very interesting conversation then about, he said, you have to make a trade-off between being rich and being a king. Right now, both of those, of course, could be, slight analogies. His point is that do you want to make a return on your money or on the effort of your business? Or he says, do you want power? And then he said, he was talking about the story then of, not a story, his experience of having to look in the mirror sometimes and say, well, am I the best person in the right position based on where we really want to take the company in terms of vision and resources and ambition, but also in ability and competence and confidence and everything else. And he said, you also have to understand is that when you do bring people in, is that you may have to relook at yourself, and you can't let that hold you back when particularly it's where you want to go anyway. It was just a very interesting point, very honest, authentic point. We also asked him, to characterize the relationship that he had with his equity stakeholders. And he said, they're honest conversations where we generally hit our milestones. He says there's no shouting, and it's very respectful, but it's productive and it's forward looking and so on. Is that it's not, the big dramatic buy, sell, show me the KPIs type of thing that can often be overly dramatized. And there's lots of other misconceptions that can be out there. Is that he said that's what it's like, and he would be quite a proponent of equity investing. He said, as in going out to bring in external investors in order to scale your business. So I asked him, I said, what would you say to people who are nervous about taking their business to the next level? And he said, give it a go, but don't underestimate the power and the networks that you'll gain in a bigger company or as part of a larger ecosystem. He said, take the team with you in terms of rewards. Don't worry too much about failure, because after all, what's the difference between failure where it doesn't succeed and you might possibly have to get a job somewhere else, in comparison to not trying and wondering what if. And then he also said, consider a portfolio career, like Sherry Coutu showed us on her slide, or like I mentioned in his own case, where he is an investor, an entrepreneur, a CEO himself. Then we also had two really interesting panel discussions as well. So they were with some really, again, very insightful people who've walked the walk and so on. Started off where we had Kerry Baldwin, and in addition to that then we also had Neil McGowan. And both of those are tagged in this post as well, but brought an awful lot of insight to the table. So I'm going to start off with Kerry. So she said, it's all about the founder connection. Do your homework on who you might bring into your business and who you could work with in the future. She said you need to consider, is the investor who's going to invest in you suitable for your sector, understand your problems and can help you overcome them. She said that Northern Ireland has a great ecosystem in terms of strong university and tech. She listed out an array of sectors that Northern Ireland could be very strong. And she also said that there's a good grant system as well where you can risk share with the government. She said what Northern Ireland also needs to do is to bring in outside mentors in specific areas and to encourage people to continue to go the distance. She said you need to attract a team that's better than you, learn how to lead it and instill culture across the organisation. She said to avoid people selling out too early and to practice your 4-minute pitch all the time. And then Neil said that what's important is not the situation where we are today in terms of attitude and willingness to go after the investment that can bring companies to another level. He said it's the direction of travel is what matters. He said diversity of capital is important in an entire entrepreneurial ecosystem within a country or within a community. And he said that the amount of money and nuance of that money is changing over time. He said that also equity may not necessarily be the enemy of family business. Indeed, family business may want to travel from one generation to the other, but actually equity investment can help with that. He said ESG factors are growing in importance in two areas. One is simply in how a business works, to make sure that it's meeting environmental, social and governance metrics, but also the companies that are solving problems in those spaces are becoming progressively more interesting. And he said the number one thing he would do is encourage companies to get advice on this. Then we had Paul Morris and we also had Hussein Kanji, both again who are tagged in this post. And then Paul, he said he would say that everybody should consider equity, that it does help you to accelerate beyond where you've gotten to at a certain point. He said there is value in brevity of your message. He said he specifically remembered a quote that somebody had given him in Silicon Valley. He said, I asked him for the time and he showed me how to build a clock. In other words, answer the question that you're being asked with short, sharp and be brief and be straight to the point. But also then he said, the key thing that you need to do is build the attention that you're getting from investors and then open up the conversations and make sure that they are the right fit. In terms of what should be in that conversation, he said you need to answer, what does the company do? How is it unique and exciting? What are they raising money for? How does it solve a problem? How big is the problem? And how is the exit going to happen thereafter? That ultimately is what you need. So then I said, how much do you need to raise? And at what percentage to keep it interesting for both you and the investor? And he said, what you need to do is to fundraise so that you can cover the next 18 months to 2 years. And don't be put off by the type of environment that's there now. He said it's very positive at the moment, but he said, remember, in 2000, people didn't know what 2001 would be like. And in 2008, they didn't know what 2009 would be like. And after all, we've just come through 2020. So I think his point there is well made. And then we had Hussein. So he said that there is increasing amounts of bootstrapping at the moment, particularly in technology, because the market is big and the cost is low. He said there's lots of money out there if you have a good idea and you can communicate it. He also said if you can, make sure that other companies are hearing about you before you're going to them yourselves directly, so that can boost your potential of doing well with them. He said you need to paint a vision and paint a picture of how well your company can do in the future. Leave it to the people who ask you the questions to be cynical. And he also said that in between rounds, you need to have a factor of around about 3x to make sure that it's interesting along the way. Finally, he said, spend time and energy getting embedded into the industry, because it can have lots and lots and lots of long-term potential for you and for your company and for your future founders and yourself. It was a brilliant conference, and thank you so much to Susan Nightingale, Shane O'Hanlon and Patrick Dewar for having me. It was an absolute insight and a joy.